In the heart of Selmer, Tennessee, a small town known for its quiet charm, a shocking crime unfolded in 2006. The seemingly tranquil town became the epicenter of a national media frenzy when Mary Winkler, a preacher's wife, was charged with the murder of her husband, Matthew Winkler. The case revealed a complex web of love, betrayal, abuse, and ultimately, redemption. This is the story of Mary Winkler, a woman pushed to the brink. Mary Winkler, born Mary Carol Freeman, was a gentle and reserved woman, known for her quiet demeanor and devotion to her family. Raised in a devoutly religious household, Mary grew up with strong moral values and deep faith. She met Matthew Winkler, a charismatic preacher, while attending Freed-Hardeman University. The couple quickly fell in love and married in 1996, embodying the ideal of a perfect Christian family. Matthew Winkler was the preacher at the 4th Street Church of Christ in Selmer. He was well respected in the community, known for his passionate sermons and dedication to his congregation. The Winklers had 3 young daughters, Patricia, Mary Alice, and Brianna, and their family appeared to be a model of Christian virtue. However, behind the closed doors of their home, a different story was unfolding. On the morning of March 22, 2006, the town of Selmer was rocked by a shocking discovery. Matthew Winkler was found dead in his home, the victim of a gunshot wound. The discovery was made when members of the congregation became concerned after Matthew failed to show up for an evening church service. They went to the Winkler home and, finding the door unlocked, entered to find a scene of horror. Matthew's body lay lifeless on the bedroom floor, and Mary Winkler was nowhere to be found. The authorities were immediately called, and a manhunt ensued for Mary and her 3 daughters. The search did not take long. The following day, Mary and her daughters were found in Orange Beach, Alabama, where she was arrested without incident. The news of her arrest and the charge of murder against her sent shockwaves through the community and the nation. As Mary was taken into custody, the public and the media began to speculate about the motive behind the crime. How could this quiet, unassuming woman have committed such a heinous act? What had driven her to kill her husband, a man revered by so many? The answers to these questions would slowly emerge, painting a picture of a troubled marriage marked by control, abuse, and desperation. In the days following her arrest, Mary began to open up about the circumstances that led to the tragic events of that March morning. She described a marriage that, on the surface, appeared idyllic, but was, in reality, a nightmare. According to Mary, Matthew was a controlling and abusive husband. She spoke of emotional, physical, and sexual abuse that had become part of her daily life. She described how Matthew would berate her, belittle her, and subject her to degrading treatment. The abuse extended to their children as well, with Matthew displaying a harsh and authoritarian demeanor. Mary's claims of abuse were met with skepticism by some, particularly those who knew Matthew as a kind and compassionate preacher. However, as more details emerged, the picture of their troubled marriage became clearer. Friends and family members began to speak out, corroborating some of Mary's accounts of Matthew's controlling behavior. It became evident that the Winkler household was far from the harmonious Christian family it appeared to be. One of the most harrowing aspects of Mary's testimony was her description of the events leading up to the shooting. She recounted how, on the night before the incident, she and Matthew had argued about money. Mary had been involved in a check-kiting scheme, hoping to alleviate some of the financial pressures on the family. When Matthew discovered the scheme, he became enraged. The argument escalated, and Mary felt a sense of fear and hopelessness. She went to bed that night, dreading the confrontation that awaited her the next day. In the early hours of March 22nd, Mary woke up to the sound of her daughters playing in another room. She retrieved a shotgun from the closet, a weapon that Matthew had kept in the house. She entered the bedroom where Matthew lay sleeping and, in a moment of desperation and fear, pulled the trigger. The shot struck Matthew in the back, killing him almost instantly. The prosecution painted a very different picture of the events. They argued that Mary had planned the murder, driven by a desire to escape her marriage and gain financial independence. They pointed to the check-kiting scheme as evidence of her deceitful nature and suggested that she had killed Matthew to avoid the consequences of her actions. The prosecution also questioned the veracity of Mary's claims of abuse, suggesting that she had fabricated the allegations to gain sympathy. As the trial progressed, the jury was presented with a complex and often conflicting narrative. On one hand, there was the image of Mary Winkler, the meek and devoted wife, pushed to the brink by years of abuse. On the other hand, there was the portrayal of Mary as a cold and calculating murderer, willing to kill her husband to achieve her own ends. The truth, it seemed, lay somewhere in between. One of the most compelling moments of the trial came when Mary took the stand to testify in her own defense. She spoke with a quiet dignity, recounting the years of abuse and control she had endured. She described the fear and desperation that had led her to pull the trigger. Her testimony was emotional and raw, and it left a profound impact on those present in the courtroom. The defense also called expert witnesses to support Mary's claims of abuse. Psychologists testified about the effects of long-term abuse and the impact it can have on a person's mental state. They spoke of the concept of battered woman syndrome, a condition that can lead victims of abuse to act out in ways that may seem irrational to outsiders. These testimonies provided a context for Mary's actions, suggesting that she had acted out of a sense of self-preservation. The prosecution, however, remained steadfast in their argument that Mary had planned the murder. They pointed to inconsistencies in her story and highlighted the financial troubles that had plagued the Winkler family. They argued that Mary had been motivated by a desire to escape her responsibilities and start a new life. As the trial drew to a close, the jury was faced with the daunting task of determining Mary's fate. After several days of deliberation, they reached a verdict. On April 19, 2007, Mary Winkler was found guilty of voluntary manslaughter, a lesser charge than first-degree murder. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison, with credit for the 5 months she had already served. The verdict was met with mixed reactions. Some saw it as a miscarriage of justice, believing that Mary had gotten away with murder. Others viewed it as a fair outcome, considering the abuse she had endured. The case sparked a national debate about domestic violence and the lengths to which victims can be driven. Mary served a total of 67 days in prison before being released on probation. She was reunited with her daughters and began the process of rebuilding her life. The story of Mary Winkler is a tragic reminder of the hidden struggles that can exist within a seemingly perfect family. It is a story of a woman pushed to the edge and the devastating consequences that followed. In the years since the trial, Mary has largely remained out of the public eye. She has focused on raising her daughters and moving forward from the events that changed her life forever. The town of Selmer, too, has tried to heal from the shock and scandal that rocked their community. The Mary Winkler case continues to be a subject of fascination and debate. It raises important questions about the nature of abuse, the limits of self-defense, and the complexities of human relationships. It is a case that will be remembered for its dramatic twists and turns and for the tragic events that unfolded in a small town in Tennessee. As we reflect on the story of Mary Winkler, we are reminded of the importance of compassion and understanding. It is easy to pass judgment on those involved in such cases, but the truth is often more complicated than it appears. Behind every headline, there is a human story, filled with pain, fear, and ultimately, a search for redemption. Mary Winkler's journey through the criminal justice system was fraught with challenges and emotional turmoil. The aftermath of the trial saw her grappling with the consequences of her actions and the need to rebuild her life. For many, her story is a cautionary tale about the hidden dangers that can lurk within a seemingly perfect marriage, and the desperate measures one might take when pushed to the brink. Following her release from prison, Mary faced numerous hurdles as she attempted to regain custody of her daughters and re-establish a sense of normalcy. The media attention surrounding the case made it difficult for her to escape the public's scrutiny, but she remained determined to move forward for the sake of her children. Mary's daughters, Patricia, Mary Alice, and Brianna, were deeply affected by the events that transpired. The sudden loss of their father and the subsequent separation from their mother left emotional scars that would take years to heal. Family members and close friends stepped in to provide support and stability, but the impact of the tragedy was profound. Mary's relationship with her in-laws, the Winkler family, was strained. Matthew's parents, Dan and Diane Winkler, struggled to reconcile the image of their beloved son with the allegations of abuse that surfaced during the trial. They were devastated by his death and sought to understand the reasons behind it. Despite their grief, they focused on providing a loving environment for their granddaughters, hoping to shield them from further pain. The case also brought attention to the broader issue of domestic violence and the challenges faced by victims seeking justice. Advocates for domestic violence awareness used Mary Winkler's story as a platform to highlight the need for better support systems and legal protections for those experiencing abuse. The concept of battered woman syndrome became a focal point in discussions about the psychological impact of long-term abuse and the ways in which it can influence a person's actions. In the years following her release, Mary Winkler sought to live a quiet life away from the media spotlight. She found solace in her faith and leaned on her religious community for support. Her journey toward healing was marked by moments of reflection, therapy, and a commitment to being the best mother she could be to her daughters. The town of Selmer, Tennessee, also worked to recover from the shock and scandal that accompanied the case. The 4th Street Church of Christ, where Matthew had served as preacher, continued to provide spiritual guidance to its congregation. The community rallied together, offering prayers and support to those affected by the tragedy.